hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides.
Wait, on many sides? This was a white nationalist rally. You have to call that out by name.
Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists.
The Nazis killed someone today! What are you fucking talking about? They killed...
How can you possibly say you condemn this in the strongest possible terms when you don't even name the groups responsible?
What are they really? I know their name is anti-fascist. Do they only go after fascists, or do they go after anybody, say, in the global economic community they don't like?
No, they are strictly principled anti-fascists. And what they see in the Trump administration and what they see happening in this country, they see the neo-fascism that we see.
Oh, shit, he's bleeding. Yo. Hey, man, he's bleeding. Hard.
We're looking at a video. I mean, this is like grotesque. This is like upside down world. We're looking at a video of a guy who you apparently, you say you're not, others say you are representing against felony charges, who's a leftist, who is hitting a guy who's not doing anything in the video, and it's long enough to assess that. And you're saying the real problem is something else that happened somewhere else? I mean, we're looking at video.
There's no place for this kind of violence in America. Let's come together as one.
It was extraordinary and it was despicable.
It really is despicable. He has now officially become the president of the white nationalist, not only of America, but also of the white nationalist movement.
Last night I couldn't sleep at all because President Trump, our president, has literally betrayed the conscience of our country, the very moral fabric in which we've made progress when it comes to race relations in America. He's failed us.
The footage in this video shows that indeed blame can be put on many sides. And Donald Trump's interpretation of the events are more accurate than the media sources that are attacking him for what he said. And this violence started long before Charlottesville last Saturday.
And when the president says that there were good people at this march, that they were quietly there to protest a removal of the Robert E. Lee statue, that not all of them were neo-Nazis or white supremacists, what do you think? Is that true?
No. Everyone who was there knew what they were doing. They were shouting, "Jews will not replace us."
All Nights is not a white supremacist or white nationalist organization. We're civic nationalists. We love America. We love the Constitution. We will respect anybody, any race, any color. We're all about just respecting constitutional values. I will stand up for an Antifa or Black Lives Matter protester if they're not violent. The only reason we stand up against them is because they engage in violence against us and all my brothers and sisters here. And including those white nationalists that most of us could not give a damn for. We don't agree with them at all, but they have a right to say what they want.
I think this was probably consistent with other ones that I've seen, where generally speaking, the left wing tends to initiate the violence. The difference with this one is that the right-wingers were way more prepared for it in terms of weapons and shields and things like that.
Everybody condemns violence. The mistake that you're making is that you're saying what brought the people to that rally. Their motivations are equal. And that's what got the president in trouble, and that's what gets an apologist like you in trouble. The KKK did not go there to fight against hate. And some do it the right way, some do it the wrong way.
She's holding an American flag, and a protester comes to her, drags her along there, pulls her anyway. Let's watch this.
Right there. Their side is it's about violence, and they want to talk about us being violent. All we doing is walking and protecting people's rights, and this is what we get.
Eric, we are now beginning to hear criticism bubble up on all sides of this event about the initial slow response by the police. When I got out of my car yesterday in Charlottesville for the first time at about 10:30 yesterday morning, you knew this was a bad scene and that bad things were going to be happening.
We had the single largest assembly of law enforcement officers since 9/11, almost 1,000 law enforcement personnel.
They never did their job. Their job was to mix in the middle of all of us and make sure that neither group got together so that so the violence happened. So it was basically planned violence in my view.
But when the tear gas started to fly, thrown by protesters. The police themselves began to evacuate that. I asked the guy who was in charge, I said, where are you going? He said, we're leaving. It's too dangerous. They had an opportunity to nip this thing in the bud, and they chose not to.
All right, so this is Robert E. Lee Park right here. And this is where the cops guided everyone who's attending the rally in Pen 1 and Pen 2. Now, when they came, they were marching up the street. This is Market Street right here. And they were forced to push themselves through in order to even get in either one of these entrances. Because, see, the cops had these barricades set up. These red lines are barricades. And because of the barricades, it was impossible to enter from the rear of the park.
So, Matthew Heimbach, how would you characterize the way the police handled yesterday?
I think that everything that happened yesterday was what the police wanted to happen. When we marched in with the Traditionalist Worker Party, the League of the South, and our other allies, we asked the police where they wanted us to go. And they pointed through the crowd of anti-fascist protesters and said to go through them to get to where our permitted space was. And we tried to clarify with them, saying that we have a permit to be here, we don't want there to be any conflict, and these people are throwing already, with the first 30 seconds, are spraying mace, they're attacking our folks as we're just trying to get to the rally.
What the fuck was that, you pussy?
The Charlottesville police chief, when asked whether one side was more responsible than the other, said it was an alt-right rally. But witnesses say both sides came prepared for a fight.
We did have mutually combative individuals in the crowd.
But the chief said the white nationalists did not follow the agreed-upon plan and began entering the park from other directions. The rally's organizers, including Jason Kessler, have said they were following the law and were nonviolent.
And they're denying us the ability. We have these gates right here, and all they have to do is move the gates and let us go into the event. But they're not allowing the speakers to be cramped up against this enclosed area with no way to get in or out.
Now, Jason Kessler had a permit for this. And then the permit was taken away last minute, something about relocating them to another park. But then they got a federal judge to overturn it. So they got the permit back.
We even went as far as our city manager made a decision on the Monday before the weekend when the rally was scheduled to move the permit, the location for the rally, to a larger park, a 100-acre park within the city borders, which would have provided even more speech. Would have allowed all that assembly with, armed people with very strong opinions for this to occur longer. That was struck down by a federal judge who forced us to have this event.
This gathering has been declared to be an unlawful assembly. In the name of the Commonwealth, you are commanded to immediately disperse. If you do not disperse immediately, you will be arrested.
Okay? So we just lost all of our fucking guys. And they're calling National Guard.
This is going to turn into a...
We'll see you in federal court!
Commonwealth. This was declared an unlawful assembly.
Yeah, how? We're in the federal court. We're the ones who support you guys. We'll see you in federal court.
How is this?
You're going to have to drag me out of here.
We're on your side.
Yeah. We're the ones who support you. We've got your back.
I know you do. Most of you support that statue and your heritage.
Stand down to their stupid orders. That's bullshit. Do you want to be involved in absolute tyranny?
Do you feel good about it?
Do you want to be involved in that? Ask yourself that.
We're heading for communism.
Be a man.
Cowards.
Don't listen to some idiot cop telling you what to do. But I'm not moving. I will not attack you. I will not resist, but I'm not moving.
No, we're not.
I'm not moving, sir.
These guys hate you out there, man. You don't have to do this, bro.
Sir, I will surrender. Stop. Sir, stop.
Why are you attacking us?
Today, the President of the United States ripped open wounds that have barely begun healing in Charlottesville on a subject, race, that has tormented this country from the very beginning and nearly torn it apart more than once.
Stop filming it! I don't like being filmed! Then leave!
The Antifa, there's a group of anti-fascists called the Black Bloc, which do tend to get violent. Their idea is, look, nonviolence hasn't worked, and we are going to try to stop this. But they wouldn't have been there. They wouldn't have been anywhere near there had it not been for the fact that white supremacists, neo-Nazis, were out scaring the living daylights out of most of the people in that town.
Oh, the military! Let's talk about that! The National Guard is here fucking killing people, letting them fucking get away with murder. Who'd they kill? They fucking defend the fucking people who got run over today.
Black Lives Matter were among some of those counter-protesters. Draw a distinction for me, if you will.
Well, I think what's important in this moment is white nationalists are actually fighting to take away people's rights.
Name of the Commonwealth. This was declared an unlawful assembly.
Yeah, well, how? We're in the federal court. We're the ones to support you guys.
We'll see you in federal court.
How is this? You're going to have to drag me out of here.
Black Lives Matter and groups like Black Lives Matter are fighting for equality.
I need all white people to move to the back. This is a black and brown resistance march. White media, get to the back. Black media, come to the front. Move. White people will not be obstructed. Don't get on.
Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe just released a written statement calling what happened here an act of domestic terrorism. This was not both sides, he says.
And I have a message to all the white supremacists and the Nazis who came into Charlottesville today. Our message is plain and simple. Go home. You are not wanted in this great Commonwealth. Shame on you. You pretend that you're patriots, but you are anything but a patriot. You want to talk about patriots, talk about Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, who brought our country together.
Well, no, George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down, excuse me, are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him? Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner. Now, we're going to take down his statue. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly.
It's interesting. President Trump said his statement on Saturday condemning the violence and hatred on many sides, And then his staff spent days insisting that he was condemning the Ku Klux Klan and Nazis and white supremacists, and he was not equating them with the counter-protesters, some of whom obviously were also violent, that he was focusing on the Nazis and the racists, Nazis and the racists, Nazis and the racists who had come into this progressive college town and marched and chanted, saying anti-Semitic things and racist things.
Burn, bitch! Melanin motherfucker! Burn, bitch! A carbon content you can't fuck with! We so powerful! Burn, bitch! We outnumbering y'all ass! Burn, bitch! Huh? What's going on? The sun fucking y'all up, baby! I'm cool! Y'all need suntan lotion! Anti-white! Anti-white!
This rise of the new white nationalism, that occurred long before the election of President Trump. And I called it new to distinguish it from white supremacy because it was the people who were being involved were more intellectual. They were not espousing racial violence or using epithets, but they had grievances. They were upset about multiculturalism, about affirmative action. They felt that white people's rights were being trampled.
You're fucking animals! You're a fucking animal! Look at you! Inbred piece of shit!
Are you an advocate of this sort of confrontation?
Yes, I am, yes.
What do you say to those that are concerned that, hey, you're allowing these white supremacists to claim victimhood here?
Two protest groups. Yes, they're both protest groups, and they're talking about Antifa or Antifa, however you want to pronounce it, calling them the alt-left. Well, that group protests fascism. So they were there protesting fascism. Maybe their tactics weren't exactly right. All groups like that, political groups, rights groups, protest groups, it's messy. But there is a difference between the two groups. One is a Nazi white supremacist group. What they want to do, and in their hearts, is extinguish people who look like me and who look like you, Wolf. Jewish people, black people, even women. They don't think that we're equal to them.
Because I believe that white people are born into not being human. Like that actually, instead of people of color and black folks being dehumanized, that actually everyone is dehumanized off rip within white supremacy, that y'all are born into a life to not be human, and that's what y'all are taught to do, to be demons. So in this particular way, white people are all racist.
The other is a protest group protesting a political and a racist movement. Now, I'm not saying either of them, I'm not saying that that group, all of their tactics were right, but they were there protesting hate in America.
Water. I don't know how people can protest for peace and be anti and be so mean. It's completely frightening, the anti-protesters.
What happened that day is you had a fight between two radical left-wing and right-wing extremists who came there for a fight. And there was violence, and we need to condemn both sides.
But when you say the alt-right, define alt-right to me. You define it. Go ahead.
Well, I'm saying,
define it for me. Come on, let's go. Define
Senator
it for me.
McCain defined them as the same group.
Okay, what about the alt-left that came charging at him? Excuse me. What about the alt-left that came charging at the, as you say, the alt-right? Do they have any semblance of guilt? Let me ask you this. What about the fact they came charging with clubs in their hands, swinging clubs? Do they have any problem? I think they do.
He was attacked because he was a counter-protester, and these are white supremacists. So he's black, apparently a good enough reason. So this is what we have now, lynch mobs in Virginia, in America, again.
Come on! Steve, I'm here. Steve,